This is the Klim Full Carbon X1 Alpha adventure helmet, which I've been riding in for the last 6 months. In this video, I'm going to tell you what I've learned about it, the good, the not so good, and whether it is an adventure helmet you should consider. I've been looking forward to trying this helmet for quite some time, but as usual, I wanted to make sure I had plenty of miles in it in all conditions before bringing you this review. I've been using its predecessor, the Krios Pro, a lot, so inevitably I'll be making some comparisons throughout. There are a few things I wasn't a fan of on the Krios Pro, and when this arrived, I was hoping it would remedy those particular issues. But before I talk about the riding experience, let's just take a quick look at the helmet's construction and its features. The X1 Alpha features a full hand-laid carbon fibre shell. Klim have again used Koroyd for impact protection, but this time it's sandwiched into an EPS structure. Klim say this reduces weight whilst increasing airflow, but I'll talk about how successful the airflow is later in the video. For a reference point in terms of weight, I put this on my scales at home, which are the scales that I use to weigh every helmet I review, and this came out in this spec at 1,570 grams. In terms of the shell, there is an immediate improvement in this helmet over the Krios because this comes in 3 shell sizes and 5 different EPS sizes, and when you compare that to the Krios Pro, that was only available in 2 shell sizes. And that was one of my bugbears with the Krios Pro. As much as I like that helmet, it only having 2 shell sizes meant that me, as a size large, was the smallest size in the largest shell. So it was actually quite a big helmet with a lot of padding. The new X1 Alpha is a much more compact affair, particularly if you're a size large. Ventilation comes from 2 levered vents on the chin, backed up by 2 on either side of the forehead, plus 4 permanently open venturis on the rear, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom. One of the other things I didn't like about the Krios Pro was the use of a fidlock strap. Now, I don't think it's an unsafe strap, I just don't like the mechanism. But thankfully on this helmet, Klim have returned to a good old-fashioned double D-ring strap, and those Ds are actually titanium. The interior is nice and plush with a snug goat skin trimmed neck roll and a really nicely designed chin curtain. The chin curtain has an elasticated split which makes it really easy to pull the helmet on and off, and it just springs back into place. It's a small feature, but it makes a big difference because nobody likes a baggy chin sock. There are proper speaker cutouts and a well thought out mounting section on the side to make it easy to fit pretty much any comms unit. The peak can be adjusted and removed quickly without tools, and removing it doesn't impact the visor operation. Speaking of the visor, you get 2 in the box, a clear visor and an excellent photochromic shield. A Pinlock 120 XLT is included too, and the visors are optically correct Class 1 units. Both visors that come in the box have a very clever infrared shielding coating on them, and they're also UV 400 resistant. The IR treatment stops the sun heating up the inside of the helmet when the visor is closed, and having seen and tried out the display example they had on the stand at EICMA, I can tell you this genuinely works. When you place your hand on the uncoated side, you can feel the heat from that infrared lamp. When you move your hand to the coated side, you can't feel any heat at all. And it's one of those touches that I think makes a big difference when you look at the detail that goes into this helmet. I will have to admit to being a big fan of photochromic visors. I had a transitions visor on my Shoei RYD helmet for years and absolutely loved it. You don't have to faff about worrying about swapping clear visors for tinted visors. You just fit that one and forget it. Right, okay, enough of the tech stuff. Let's get on to what this is actually like to ride in and live with day to day. The first thing I noticed is just how compact this is compared to the Krios Pro, and it actually stands up quite well against other adventure helmets that I've worn in that respect too. It feels physically smaller, lighter, and if this is the right word to use, more manoeuvrable than the Krios. There's just as much room in the chin bar, but it's not as pronounced, and I don't catch it on shoulder checks, which is something that I would do with the other helmet. Vision is excellent. There's a huge field of view, and the combination of the Class 1 visor and the 120 XLT pinlock means clarity of vision is exceptional. The photochromic visor has been brilliant as well. Now, I know, of course, that online people always seem to raise the speed of the transition of this lens as a point of debate. Personally, I think it's a bit of a moot point. When you're riding, you don't actually notice the transition happening at all. What you get is a consistent, balanced level of tint that automatically adjusts as the UV levels change. It's not like wearing dark sunglasses and suddenly taking them off in bright sunlight, or vice versa. The shift is gradual enough that your eyes are never fighting it. Obviously, in low light conditions or at night, it is completely clear. And then in sunny conditions, it just gives you that level of tint that you need. It does work really, really well. Obviously, this helmet isn't fitted with a drop-down visor. That helps Klim keep the shell nice and compact and the weight down. So a photochromic visor is very important. The only downside I can see to this is that sometimes when it's hot, I quite like to ride with the visor up to get maximum airflow, but I might drop down an internal visor if they've got it just to protect my eyes. And in those scenarios, all I do is carry a pair of sunglasses with me. So for me, it's photochromic all the way, baby. Now I'm back again with another annoyance of the Krios Pro, but it is related to the photochromic visor that I had on that. On that helmet, because of the design of the peak with lots of cutouts, when you were riding with it up or sat with it up in very sunny conditions, you ended up with a kind of a mesh pattern on the front when you put it down, because you had areas that were completely blocking out the sun, so it would return to clear, and you had areas that were getting the sun and they would stay at maximum darkness. It was frustrating. It did take a few seconds to clear, so it wasn't the end of the world, but it was one of those things that just kind of constantly bugged me. On this, because of the change of this peak, there's less cutouts, it's much more solid in the way the cutouts have been designed, that when you do put this up in the sunshine, you don't get that pattern on the visor. So nice one, Klim, you fix that one. Now there is one consideration you have to make with this peak, and that is wind noise. Now generally this is pretty good. On a naked bike I've had no issues with it, but if you ride a bike with a screen, which to be honest for this kind of helmet is probably what you are going to be riding, then you have to be wary. So for example, the Africa Twin at the moment has got its screen in its lowest position, and what I find on this with my height, that it throws the wind up, catches the peak, and I get a little bit of resonation. It's a little buzz. It's not really annoying, but it's definitely there. If I put the screen in the highest position, I don't get any of it. So whilst I think this is a big improvement on the previous peak, both in terms of the way it's structured so you don't get that light on the lens, and also the removal and all of that stuff, it's good. As is inevitable with these type of helmets, you are still going to get some wind noise from it, depending on how tall you are and what bike you're riding. There's a tab on each side of the visor, which is great to see, along with a now ECE 2206 mandatory center lock. It's a friction lock, no buttons or lever, which I like. I do like that first detent position though. It cracks the visor open just enough to bring in some really nice airflow, and it certainly helps to clear moisture on wet days. Now, these front vents don't look like much, but they're actually surprisingly effective. They're not huge open ports that you get in some helmets, but because the venting works in combination with the Koroyd layer, the heat is moved out of the helmet extremely efficiently. Throughout the hot spell that we had here in the UK during the summer, I never once overheated in this helmet, and I was really surprised at just how well it moved warm air out. Now obviously you've got that infrared coating on here, so that kind of stops that heating up initially, but obviously when you're out riding, it's 35 degrees, you've got the sun on the helmet, things do get warm. But the fact that that Koroyd directly vents to the back here means that any warm air that builds up in the helmet gets whisked away very quickly and very easily. Now, one side effect, if you like, of this is that I found that you've got more ambient noise in the helmet when you're stationary. And I think that's probably a good thing, because you've got a gap in the EPS and you've got this Koroyd that vents directly out to here. You can tend to hear a little bit more that's going on around you. It doesn't affect the noise of the helmet when you're riding. It doesn't make it noisy. But I just noticed if you're talking to people, particularly as I wear earplugs, you can hear them just that fraction clearer in this than I can in something like my Arai Tour X5, which has a more of a closed-in shell. Once on the move though, wind noise is minimal and buffeting is non-existent. Because of that wide eye port, if you want to use goggles, you'll have no problems at all. I tried both the Ariete 8K and Klim Rage goggles, which are both pretty much about as big a goggle as you're going to get, and they fit in there with no problem whatsoever. So overall, the helmet I found to be very comfortable. It vents well, it offers exceptional vision. And things like the peak and the visor being able to remove without any tools are plus points. It's all ticking a lot of boxes. Now, I did mention earlier that you can get a bit of buzz out of this peak. Now, either I've got used to it or it's actually settled down with use, because I have to admit that I haven't noticed that as much in the last few weeks, even though I'm still riding the same bike. One thing that I do need to mention though concerns this central locking tab, because I found that it doesn't always lock into place first time. Most of the time it does, but if you push it down aggressively on one side, the tab doesn't line up perfectly and you need a second press. But it has happened, so definitely worth a mention. Pricing wise, yes, this is a premium lid with premium features, and it, to be fair, commands a premium price. But that price does seem to fluctuate. Sports Bike currently lists this between £700 and £725, depending on which of the 7 designs you choose. Ultimately, only you can decide on the value. Yes, it is an expensive helmet, but it is also a very nicely constructed helmet with premium materials, and there's a lot of thought gone into it with some genuinely useful tech. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time riding in this helmet. It's comfortable, quiet, lightweight, and aside from the tiny niggle that I've mentioned, I've only really had positive experience. Of course, no helmet is perfect, but this one comes close, very close. So if you've got any questions about the X1 Alpha, let me know in the comments section down below. I will try to help you out where I can. And outside of that, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, take care, ride safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.